Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you again for joining us today. Welcome to Forensic Restitution's The F Word. This is the fourth in a series of insightful 30-minute interactive sessions with Q&A opportunity, all on fraud-related topics intended to help you understand the various fraud threats and what you can do to mitigate them. My name is Louise Taylor, and I will be your moderator today. A little background for new attendees. Forensic Restitution is a fraud investigation company specializing in fraud investigation, recovery, and prevention services. The speakers you'll hear from today bring over 50 years of collective experience in fraud detection and prevention, data analysis and recovery, insurance claims, cybercrime, fidelity guarantee, and business interruption claims. In today's discussion, we're really thrilled to be introducing a guest speaker, which is the first time we've done this in the series. And forensic analyst Tamara Kiddo will be speaking with Jane about her firsthand experience as a victim of a con man and her road to recovery. So a little housekeeping before we dive in. Our session, as I mentioned, will be 30 minutes long, and it is intended to be an interactive session. We will have time for questions following the short discussion, but I encourage you to post your comments or questions in the chat as we go. We will endeavor to answer them all during the session and can also contact you directly if you prefer a private conversation. Please note that we will be recording this session. It will be posted on our website for future access. So without further delay, I would first like to introduce the experts that you will hear from today, as well as our guest speaker. So Dave Oswald, forensic accountant; Simon Paget, forensic accountant; Sachin Maharaj, forensic legal; and Tamara Kiddo, forensic analyst. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Tamara, who will introduce our guest speaker for today.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We decided to change it up a little this week and have a guest speaker. 20 years ago, or almost 20 years ago, Forensic Restitution was started by Dave, and they had a slogan which was, "Fraud hurts, we make it better." So fraud is a very painful thing to go through for any victim. You know, if you're an employer, one of your employees steals from you, it's just very painful to know that somebody that you trusted has turned against you. But I think one of the most painful frauds to go through are those frauds that are committed by people that are close to you. So somebody that you've let into your life, a family member, a good friend, or possibly somebody you're intimately involved with. So our next guest, Jane Doe, and I hesitate to call her Jane because she's anything but plain Jane. Our guest is a vibrant, beautiful, successful woman who had and has everything going for her. And unfortunately, she became the target of, I would say, a con man. And, you know, really went through a painful experience. And we're happy to report she's on the other side of this. So we just want to thank you, Jane, for sharing your experience with others. So those of us in the business can appreciate really what it's like for a victim to go through this, this type of ordeal. And even those of us who might be single, just to be aware some of the red flags that are out there when you're meeting people. There's a lot of, you know, with the dating apps and whatnot, there's a lot of catfishers out there. And so just to be aware of some of the red flags that you might be involved with the wrong person. So Jane, without further ado, maybe you could just, hi there.
Hi, Tamara.
Thank you again.
Hi, guys.
Thanks again for joining us. And I thought maybe you could start off by just taking us through how you met, we're going to call him Nick, how you met Nick, and just take us through, you know, your meeting, maybe up until the point where you started to have some red flags and some doubts about, about what he was up to.
Sure. Well, I wanted to say thank you guys for joining, and thanks for having me and asking me to be a part of this, because I think it's a really, really important thing to be able to do to educate others. And if I can help, then I hope my story will help someone. How I met my partner, well, mine was a multifaceted case in the fact that it wasn't just one person. It wasn't the person I was involved with intimately. It ended up being my whole team that ended up being a part of this con over time. And so that was made it into a very, very complex case, which was very challenging, difficult to get out of, and I just about lost everything financially because of it. How I met the person that I ended up getting involved with is I was traveling around. I had a mortgage lending company at the time, and I was looking to expand my peer group. So I decided to, I knew that what I was doing by just the mortgages, I wanted to expand and do something a bit different. And I knew I wanted to grow my wealth. I wanted to grow in business, and it wasn't inspiring to me. So I went and joined a group called the Platinum Partnership Group working with Tony Robbins. And it was for high net worth individuals. And that was in 2013. And that year you get to do, it was pretty intense traveling and a lot of seminars, and you become really close as a group of people. There was about 200 members that were involved in the group, and you become kind of like a family. And I had been to a leadership, we did this, they did a leadership seminar in San Diego. And the night before the seminar was starting, we as a group were meeting beforehand, and he ended up being at that meeting. And I just had assumed that he was part of the group, that somebody because people would come that were new, and I didn't know that he wasn't part of the group. And he just, so it was safe. I felt safe because he was part of this group. It turns out he was not part of the group. However, I come to understand that actually he had been doing Tony Robbins for a really long time, and he was learning a technique called NLP, neuro-linguistics programming. And in what Tony Robbins does, and a lot of facilitators do, NLP is a type of hypnosis, and it can be used for good, but him being a con artist was using it for his own benefits of the con. And so he knew that the platinum partners were high net worth people because he had done it long enough to know that they had. So he placed himself in the group in order to find someone like myself. So I was targeted. Me, not specifically, someone like me was targeted. And I didn't know it at the time because my brain doesn't operate like this. So my guard was down immediately just because I thought he was part of this family, that was created. I started to get to know him over the next few months. He told me that he was not married. He told me he was from Chicago. And over time, he was not someone that I was interested in being intimate with or having a relationship with, but he was very persistent. He wouldn't leave me alone. Like he pursued me in a major way. And now looking back at it, he was using NLP on me the whole time. So I'm still trying to sort through how that all happened, but he was very persuasive. I ended up having a relationship with him over the next, it took a couple months, because I became good friends with him. And we would meet at different groups. We'd meet in LA. We'd meet. So I never was in Chicago to find out what his life was like. But he was married with 3 kids and a wife. And I don't know. It's just I believed what he said. I believed that he was in this group, and I was naive and never questioned really anything, because that's not who I am. I believe people at face value. That was my biggest concern, or that was my biggest mistake.
So slowly over time, he became involved in your life, involved in your businesses eventually.
So it started out incredibly slow. So so when we started dating, so I met him in the October. By about January, by that time we were involved and we were dating. And I remember him, the first thing that I remember him doing is he was then telling me that he was leaving, or he was now separated from, he had always said he was separated from his wife, but he made it appear that he was really struggling. But the lies, he would tell lies that didn't make sense, but he was so manipulative in how he would explain these things to such a detailed degree that you couldn't question it.
Yeah. So what prompted you to contact us? At what what was that point? And maybe then I'll go into what we discovered.
Well,
what he was doing
throughout, so for it was 5.5 years. So 2019, it was early 2019. We had, over the time, he started to impinge himself and, get so involved. But from the start to the 5.5 years, I lost all control of my life. He had taken complete control over my life. I had the net wealth. I mean, at the time, I think I had a net wealth of $12 million. And that was, clear out, like I was in a really, really good financial position. And he literally took over my whole life. So I got a phone call, or I had a business partner, because we had started an investment company investing in, and my goal was to invest in companies. And I was looking for companies to invest in and partner with, specifically in real estate sector, and to help them grow and expand. And so that's what we were doing. And so I placed him in a position also and gave him a lot of control over my life in order to build this company, because I couldn't do everything. So we partnered with a company in Montreal building student housing. So we were building student housing by McGill and Concordia University and in Halifax. So we had expanded that from doing fourplexes he was doing until, we had, at that point last year, we had $130 million worth of real estate that was being developed in that short period of time, in the 4-year span. My had came to tell me that he had told me that had been cheating on me with a woman in Mexico. And so that was my first time I had found out that there was an affair from Mexico City. And I was devastated. I had no clue.
Yeah.
But the lies that had that's where it was kind of Pandora's box was opened.
Yeah.
At that point. Because I knew that the lies had to be really deep.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you had some idea of what was going on before you contacted us, which is usually the case.
I did.
And then once you contacted us, I guess one of the things that we did was we went in, well, first of all, we did a bit of a background search. You had already hired a private investigator.
I did.
And I think what we found sort of corroborated what they had found as well. One of the things that I thought was pretty notable was that Nick was using 2 different last names, or versions of the same spelling of a last name. And to me, that is one red flag. When somebody is not presenting themselves the same way all the time, that is a red flag. We have another case, the same thing. There's one little letter added to the name, and that just changes everything. So,
well, the other thing too is I didn't realize it, and was really interesting, is that, and I didn't see it, and you should be able to see these things, but when you're building a company, and we had a company name, but he was changing the name. He was using that company name, but he was changing, and he was changing it to LLC. And he had started other companies to look exactly like that company, because the bank accounts he could then send and use all of the website, everything, and you wouldn't be able. So he could create businesses and filter money in other ways, by just changing it ever so slightly.
Yeah. So
Okay,
this is
well,
the essence of the fraud was really, so this guy took company XYZ Corp, which Jane had, founded, and basically created mirror companies with the same name with an LLC at the end. And what he did was
LLC or Inc.
LLC, yeah, exactly. And so he did this with 3 or 4 different companies.
That's right.
And then proceeded to do different deals with them. So he was a middleman for real estate financing deals. So those at least fell in within the scope of what your original company did. But he also, crazy enough, started getting into the oil business.
Right.
And this guy acted as a middleman to trade oils. And I'm not talking a little bit of oil. He
we
was
found out, yeah.
be a middleman to trade whole tankers of oil, finding a buyer and a seller in the oil market. And so really, really crazy. He was pretty ballsy, let me just say.
He was doing it with Russian companies, Chinese companies.
Yeah. And
Mexican companies.
There was some African involvement as well.
Yeah.
But here on the screen, I think Dave has shared here, just want to show some of the things we found in our email review. That was another element of this. So there was an assistant involved.
That was my virtual assistant. Yeah.
Yeah. So
now here's the thing, is that he was the dictator of how this was. I had no idea, but my assistant was involved in it, and so was my finance analyst was involved in it. And I did not know this was all happening behind my back.
So what we see on the screen at the moment is one of the bank accounts, and we've just taken out all of the details of who the bank account was for, but we've left in the actual numbers. And you can see on screen that there was 96 million in this bank account at the one point in time. Now, that was quite strange to us, because when we had a look at the amounts that were going in and out of the account, the amounts were significantly smaller than that. But the 96 seemed to continue. So what we went in to do is we went to edit the PDF. And we could quite quickly see that there'd been some numbers added. So you could take the 96 and just move it out of the way, and you had the actual balance that was in that particular bank account at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the 96 here was, you could just pull out of the way. So what they'd done is they'd just gone in and done a simple edit.
Now, so the other thing too was this company that we're looking at was my specific company. It had nothing to do with him. So this was my company in the United States. So it was a name, and then the name of the company plus Inc. So what he was doing is he was using this company, but then he was changing it to LLC, and plus using a website from my Canadian company, and nobody really caught it. But this was not his company at all. This was my company.
So what he was using is your bank statements from your legitimate company for his legitimate company in order to show that he had funds, in order to make the transactions work.
Here's some other interesting things that he did that I didn't know. He was very, very clever. Like he really, really he was always 30 steps ahead of me, of course. But he would use I owned a bunch of real estate and condos and different kinds of property in the United States. And I had one specific lawyer that I used. And so when he was transferring money into a trust account, he would say it was for a real estate deal that we were doing. But in fact, what we found is he was he was paying for the testing of oil, and he was using and transferring money to a trust account for these oil, like $250,000. But he was using my real estate lawyer, so I wouldn't question it, because I would think, of course, it was for real estate. So he was very clever in what he put on there and who he used, so I wouldn't catch it.
How did you eventually get out of the scheme, Jane?
How did I get out?
Yeah. How did you figure out that after you figured it out, what was the process that you had to go through to get some of your money back?
Well, the first thing I had to have an acceptance of where I was and what I was facing. That was, I think, the hardest, because when you're placed in a situation like that, I was very suicidal. I thought there was no way I could get out of this, because I had been threatened. He had hired people to threaten me. How I got through it was day to day, moment to moment, hiring. I had to hire the forensic rescue guys to help me dissect, because I didn't even know, to find out what all was going on. I didn't know. So I had to do it step by step. And then I had to hire a really great legal team and do a ton of investigation myself and dissect it, and then start fighting. I had to fight. I had to fight for what was mine, and hope that I could recover.
I don't think people actually understand how hard it hits individuals when somebody does this to you, and how bad the break in trust is.
Well, if I didn't have the money to fight it, that's the problem, is catching something before this ever happens, and really doing hardcore due diligence on someone's background. Had I done that and hired an investigator before I partnered with this person, I would have found out. If I would have spent $2,000 it cost me to hire a private investigator to investigate who this person was before I partnered with him, I could have saved myself millions of dollars. At the end of the day, he ended up stealing millions of dollars from me, and he'll never be held accountable. In fact, he's still raising money for people don't know. And the reason I'm blanked out as Jane Doe, I can't speak out because I've got a gag order. So I can't, not to mention he's crazy. So I think there's parts of me that are scared my life would be at risk, and because he is crazy. But it's really important to do the due diligence on people before, and really know who you're dealing with before you're partnering with people or investing your money with people.
Louise, have we had any questions come in?
No questions in the chat at this point, but please, by all means, either, at this point where we have a few minutes left, and we wanted to make sure that we left time for questions. So please go ahead and add any questions or comments that you might have in the chat, because we would love to speak to and understand what your questions are.
So I have a question here. Somebody is asking what happened to Nick. So do you know where he's at right now, and what's he done?
What of the companies? So there was no winning for me. I mean, ultimately the situation, we haven't got enough time to go into the complexities of my case, but my hands and feet were tied trying to get out of how complex this was. So I'm giving a very simplistic version of what really happened in that year, or year and a half of me fighting. But ultimately, he ended up stealing millions of dollars from me, and I had to give him one of the companies that I put $1 million into in the States, the storage facility company. And he's there, the website's there, and he's raising money from people, and people think that he's not somebody that he is. They don't. The lies are, he's doing podcasts, and he's doing media, and he's not the person that he claims to be.
Did you give him signing powers on your accounts, pins to your accounts, bank access accounts, stuff like that?
I did. I would never do that again, ever. I did.
So from a couple of questions have come in. Thank you very much. Appreciate your courage to explain this. Sure, it's, and recognition how painful this must have been for you, or this must continue to be for you. What else can be done to prevent such characters from hurting others? And maybe, Jane or Tamara or Dave, based on the experiences and stuff that you've had, what would you be able to recommend?
Do not ever take someone at face value. I mean, that sounds sad because we all want to be trusting and, you know, but when it comes to your money or, you know, the time you're spending with people, you got to know who you're dealing with. And, you know, I'm now newly, which I can't, Dave, you even said, I can't believe you're dating. Like I didn't think I'd ever date again, but I've investigated this new person. I now it's worth the time, especially if you've got anything, you investigate who you're involved with. And the first inkling of a gut, my gut was right all the time. He was super manipulative, but my gut always knew. I knew it was painful and my gut knew, but he was really good at convincing me that it was. So go with your gut and really research who you're involved with.
I'm sure that's what makes this doubly painful, is that, you know, you're grappling with that whole, you know, just second guessing yourself all the time, and especially when you're dealing with a master manipulator, it's just so complex. And I think
it is. The other thing is, I would safeguard passwords. Even when you're in a relationship, I will never give my passwords or my access to my stuff. I don't care if it's a husband. I don't care who it is. I will never give up that again in my life. Never.
And I think that answers, there was a question there that asking with whether you gave access to your banking, and yes, she had.
Sometimes
so that
it's
again,
easier. You think that it's easier, and the chances of this happening to most people is unlikely, but I didn't think it could happen to me. I mean, this is like a bad movie. It was a really bad movie, and I would have lost everything had I not had the money to fight it. And when I say I was suicidal, I was suicidal. I just about didn't make it out alive. Number one, I mean, he did awful things too. I mean, my house was broken into. He hired people to threaten me. It wasn't straightforward. He was full-time, like he is not a sane human being.
Right. And unfortunately, towards the end, I think we learned that he was on to his next victim, the daughter of a very wealthy Mexican. So, yeah, I mean, just a serial monster. Yeah.
When I researched it, he had done this to his past business partner, and it cost his ex-business partner. I reached out to him. I found out that actually it cost him $1 million to fight in court. And he just about went bankrupt, and his wife miscarried a baby over it. So he had devastated someone prior to me. This was something that he's done and will continue to do. The issue now is that what I have found is that if you partner with someone and in business or anything, you better have the money to be able to fight it, because when things go bad, there's no one that's going to help hold someone accountable. Our system, especially in Canada, is not set up that way. And that's why he's got away with it. Yeah. The system in the States, the white collar crime, you know, if you're all it did, this case, it's a lose, because now he is set in place. It is only reassured, and he's learned more of what he can get away with.
Yeah, thank you. This has been so true. We have a few other comments and questions, and we're on time. We're at the end of our time. A couple of things that I think in terms of, you know, how do you got around the gag order? Well, the reality is the reason that we've changed her name is because the gag order is still in place. So there is no getting around that gag order, I suppose. And we're trying to make sure that protecting her identity. And then in terms of, do you have any issues with your credit now? Last question.
Well, it destroyed all of my businesses. I have no business left. I've had to, because of the liabilities have been, so I've had to literally start all over again. Financially, I've gotten money, fortunately back. I had millions stolen from me, but I have to start all over again. All those companies will now be shut down because there's such a liability in what he's done. So my identity is fine. My businesses imploded. He destroyed everything that I worked 25 years for.
Mhm.
I have to start over.
Thank you. Tamara, Dave, some final words for...
I think people just have to realize that conmen, whether it's conning you as a person or whether it's conning you within your company, are willing to play a very long game, and they're willing to also, they're willing to get involved in personal relationships. They're willing to do whatever it takes for them to win at their long con.
It's absolutely true. It says here, I got a question. Is your personal brand affected in your moving forward? My personal brand is destroyed.
Mhm.
There is no personal brand. I've had to, I have to start over. My path is different.
Yeah, it is very, very difficult. And it's one thing that we continually preach is when you're hiring somebody to join your company, or you even starting to date somebody, do a personal check on them. It's worth it in the long run. And it's not being horrible, it's just finding out what the person is, because you really don't want to be on the wrong side of one of these transactions. As Jane said, she was lucky that she had the money in order to fight it. There are a lot of people that we've come across who just don't even have the money to fight it at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's a question here from Shireen. This one, if she wants to talk to me, it says, in the event is my investment. Okay, this is how I got screwed. So that one is splitting the revenue with him because he has the experience in the industry. That's what I did. That's what I got screwed with. So that whoever's that question comes from, unless she has a complete understanding, because the other way that I got screwed is they set up share structures that were so complex, you couldn't follow it. So unless you understand it 100%, you do not partner or do anything unless you understand it 100%.
That is such great advice.
Don't.
Yeah, thanks for that advice, because he is a former lawyer, so that is.
Oh yeah, well.
That doesn't mean you need to trust him.
No.
Being a lawyer, he just knows what he can get away with.
No.
That's exactly why. Thank you. And Jane, I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your story, because you really are helping a lot of people, more so than you know.
I will continue to anyone that needs help. I mean, I'm writing a book right now for this specific purpose. Because I do not want this ever happening. To avoid someone going through what I went through. It's a horrible thing. It can devastate your life, and it devastates a lot of people's lives.
Yeah. And I think you're very brave for having taken the time to come.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you so much for being so brave to share all this, especially it being so painful for you. And we're so happy that you're on the other side of this and can put it behind you.
I'm so grateful for you and Dave. Like, you guys have been a great support for me. And I forever thank you.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. And unfortunately, it was those circumstances. But
yeah.
But we wish you all the best.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you need anything else from me, I'm here.
Appreciate that.
Thanks very much.
Okay, bye guys.
You everybody for coming in and joining us on this.
Thank you.
And if you find these useful, please tell your friends about them. We'd love to see more people on the call next time.
I love it. Thanks, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jane.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Jane. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
If you guys have any other specific questions, please just follow up with Dave or Tamara or Sachin or Simon. And as Dave mentioned, we're doing these on our weekly calls. So please feel free to share and join in our future topics. And if you have any ideas or thoughts for topics that you would like for us to cover, please share those as well. So with that, if there's no other comments, I will close this off and thank everybody and have a terrific day.
Bye, guys.